cameras are running.
Okay. So, Will, when was that? I don't really have to be. When was the first time you were in the crop circle?
Well, the first time I was in a crop circle, Charlie, was 1990 when we had our first pictogram here. I was only 18 months old at the time, so memories are very thin, but there is a photo of me in the middle, so we got evidence of that one. But yeah, started on that one and visited at least one every year on the farm since.
How have your impressions changed of crop circles over time as you've gotten older?
Sure. Well, as I was growing up, I think I took, as I did all the other sort of children in the village, we just took it for granted, really. It was alien spaceships coming down and making something. But you get a time when you get to an age and you start to think, you know, what is this? Is it something serious, or is it just a load of jokes, really? And I suppose about the age of 12, 13, I really started to take a real interest in it. Formations around 2002, 2003. And, you know, really wanted to decide myself whether this was a phenomenon we were looking at, or a group of talented people hoaxing the formations.
So, as we speak now, where do you stand?
I'm very open-minded to the whole phenomena, to be honest. I think you've got to be. I think it's the sanest way. However, I will tell you now, I do not believe that they are all made by people with planks of wood in the middle of the night. I think it's very ignorant to assume that in a universe of our size, we are the only people on this planet. So, sorry, I meant in this, not on this planet. Let me start again.
That was good, though.
Yeah.
So the question was, where do you stand right now?
Well, I remain very open-minded, Charlie, to the whole phenomena as such. I think you have to, really. I think it's the only sane way to deal with it. However, I will tell you that I do not believe that they are all hoaxed by groups of people with planks of wood. I think it's very... oh, shit, that was going so well.
No worries. Let me just ask a question. Should Will say my name?
Sorry, I do that quite a lot, don't I?
It's not a huge deal, but
Easier if I don't, yeah.
Yeah. Just since we're not doing two.
Sure, yeah.
Since I'm not going to be doing the nodding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, just run me that question again.
Yeah, sure. So, where do you stand now?
Where do I stand? Well, I'm very open-minded to the whole crop circle thing, really. I think you have to be. I think it's the only sane way to deal with it. However, I will tell you now, I do not believe they are all created by groups of people with planks of wood. I think it's very ignorant that in a universe the size we live in, that we can be the only beings. And I think you look at some of these formations, absolutely beautiful pieces of artwork that advertisers around the world would surely pay millions of dollars for. And these people who go around saying, you know, that they just place them in a field, you know, in the dark on a cold, rainy summer's night. You know, I can't take that. I can understand that people can make simple shapes, and indeed, you know, I've seen it done, but not some of these more exotic formations, shall we say? Not in the middle of the night, not with people. You know, I know we're a quiet, small, rural village, but we'd know if you had a sort of a man. We'd sorry.
It's fine. That was good. We
can cut that. Yeah. All right.
Yeah. You could keep talking, or I could ask.
Yeah. Let me just go back on that a bit. Yeah, I just don't think you could create some of these formations we're seeing and not be seen. You know, we are a small, quiet, rural village, but to get an army of people and equipment to create something like that in the space of a few short hours, which is, I think, what people say they can do, then no, I'm afraid I don't think you can do that.
Okay. Let's talk about the hoaxes. Do you know any hoaxes, and what's your impression of them?
I've met a few hoaxers in the past, and generally they're not the people who I would assume can make these patterns, which require geometry that a number of mathematicians find hard to even draw on a bit of paper, and size and artistic form that the world's greatest artists would enjoy to... sorry, I'm just thinking too far ahead. That's the trouble. What I want to say.
But that's exactly, you do it great.
Picking up the right bits, yeah.
So the question is, do you know any hoaxes, and what's your
Do I know any hoaxers? Yes, I have met a few, well, self-proclaimed hoaxers. Only a couple have ever given me evidence of what they can do, and haven't been overly impressed, if I'm honest. You tend to find with these people that they sort of will come out and say they've made it, but you start asking questions, and suddenly they struggle to find the answers. We've seen, the geometry, the science, the biological changes to the plants. You can't really explain that, and how these guys can go and say, that they can set this out with a few planks of wood is beyond me, really. And I know it's a shame to say it, but I do feel sometimes that people get some enjoyment by proclaiming themselves as the makers of these circles, just to get a bit of attention and a view from the public, really. And I can tell you that in the past we've had people come out and say, oh, well, we made this one or that one, and when we've come forward as a family on the farm to sort of threaten prosecution for trespassing, then suddenly the story changes. So it's all very convenient, really, whatever fits the story.
Okay, good. Let me see. So let's talk about some of the professionals who have been hired to construct circles for the media, for corporations, and how much trouble they've had.
All right, well, I'll try and give you some examples. Going back probably 10, 12 years, Mitsubishi, the car company, wanted a car placed in one of our fields. And from the diagram, a relatively easy shape to construct, I would say, compared to formations we were getting at the time. And yet it took a large number of people 2 full days of daylight to construct that. And I remember watching from the hill, and it just looked like absolute chaos, to be honest. With ladders and tapes everywhere, and it just makes me think that when you've got these people saying they're doing it in the dark, with no lights and everything, in 2 or 3 hours, it doesn't really compare. And this really wasn't a complex pattern. So that was one. And we've had others in the past for various companies, and people can't do them in the dark. They won't tend to do them in the dark at all. They'll do them during the daylight, when fine, it makes things a lot easier, and any of us could probably have a stab at something like that. But the patterns are never complex, and it's must be remembered that a lot of these patterns you see when they get put into production a lot of it's computer imposed as well. Not all of it is imprinted in the field, particularly text, you'll find, and that's misleading because the consumer just looks at the packet of Weetabix or something and thinks, oh, that was done, when actually only a small part of that was constructed. And then using imaging software, they take the image, and able to copy that into text, so it looks like it's imprinted there in the field.
Let's switch to the researchers, the meditators. What do you make of them? Because they're in our bunch, aren't they?
Sure, the researchers. Well, I've sort of always grown up knowing researchers. Some have come and gone. Used to have some staying with us down here on the farm in the early 90s. And I think a lot of them are very credible, really. A lot of them spend a lot of time and talk a lot of sense. And to me, they are the important people to have around, because they really respect the farmers and the formations, and take time and care with their research, as opposed to these, shall we say, crop circle tourists who tend to just come along. They get an interest in the phenomena for a couple of years, but don't really have that understanding, which can upset the farmer. I'm talking about parking cars, blocking gateways, cutting across our fields as if it's just a footpath rather than following the tram lines. But for those people who are out there and have got some honest research and scientific data, I'm all for that, really.
Your friends, people in your generation, what do they make of you being the centre of this phenomenon, essentially?
Yeah, what do people make of me involved in the phenomenon? Well, it's always been a controversial issue amongst friends. It's one of those subjects which you either bring up or you don't. It can scare some people off, so it's sometimes best to hold it back for a while. And most friends, as most people are in this country, because the media relay it as such a joke and a ball of laughs, are very sceptical, and it doesn't help that I'm at university at the moment, and as soon as I come home for a couple of nights while I'm still in term time, we get a crop circle, and so as soon as I go back, it's like, oh, you made the circle, you've been home, sort of thing. So that doesn't help, and people say, have you been abducted, this, that, and the other. But I tell people, if they want to hear it, and often they do, and they'll watch a DVD, and they'll still be sceptical, and I'll say that you can't take anything for granted until you've come and seen the actual shapes for yourself. So I bring them down just casually, and I haven't had one person ever go away from here with a changed mind, just saying, wow, something's going on here. I mean, quite what their final decision is up to them. I would never try and push anything upon anybody. I think it's for us all to draw our own conclusions, but I don't think anybody can deny that something strange is happening in the fields of Wiltshire.
So it doesn't help you get laid, is what you're saying.
So I have to reply. Does it help me get laid? No, I think frighten the last one off, actually.
Oh, sorry. Okay, let's see. What about, let me ask you about Doug and Dave. What's your impression of them?
Doug and Dave, well, I was very young when Doug and Dave came out with their whole story, so I rely on accounts, really, from the parents' generation. I think Doug and Dave was a very well calculated plot, really, at the time when crop circles were clearly gathering a lot of interest. And I don't know huge detail, but I think the government were becoming slightly concerned of what was going on. I don't think anybody could put a clear answer on it. And I think, it may have been a government media type cover-up, a good way of getting the public to shut up and keep quiet, really. And on the surface, you open the Mirror or the Sun and you see Doug and Dave, this and that, that's enough, really. If you're not living in the countryside, if you haven't experienced it, then why not? It's a good answer to take. But I know, and as I'm sure you do, that what they stated is very hard to believe, really. I mean, two guys creating God knows how many hundreds of circles over the space of 12, 15 years. I mean, clever blokes who they have, but I would have personally been making some money out of my artistic skill rather than creeping around in the fields of darkness.
You mentioned that Doug and Dave, I will check this, but that you think they started around 78, or they started becoming public. But you've got family members, have you not, who've seen this going on for far longer?
Yes,
Doug
well,
and Dave.
yeah, Doug and Dave, I think, but it's the late 70s they started, and that was enough for a lot of people at the time, because crop circles had only really been documented in the media throughout the late 70s, 80s, and, well, just into the 90s at that point. However, I've got living family members who were on this farm years before I was born, who remember seeing them in the 1950s and 1960s. They were small circles. Nobody really ever made a fuss about them. I don't think they thought what to think. Maybe wind damage or something similar, but it has to rule out this idea that Doug and Dave were responsible for all this. They wouldn't have just come to a corner of our farm and made a tiny circle that nobody was going to recognise. We know they were in it for the attention and the publicity, and our society's changed a lot, and I can believe today that people might get enjoyment from hoaxing them in the fields, but during the 40s, 50s and 60s, people just didn't do that sort of thing. You'd never dream of trespassing on somebody else's land. And I personally believe they were probably appearing long before that. And if you ask the right people, they would probably state that for you. I just don't think people would say it as a matter of course.
Let's think, what else can we ask you? You want to tell us about some of your stories, some personal experiences you had, like Born Alive, or capturing one on film? You can mention both.
Okay. Well, I often get asked, if I've had experiences myself with the phenomena, and I have to admit, I'm not one of these people who can pick up these energies or feelings. That's really not me. I'm just your normal local country boy, really. But I did once see a light when I was probably only 8 or 9 years old, and that really has stuck with me. And that was coming down the hill from Lockeridge to Alton Barnes, just having a look over towards the East Field, as it's referred to in crop circle terms. And it was one evening, it was dark, I think probably springtime, early spring, and I was a passenger in a car. We were just driving down the hill. I just looked to the left over the field, not expecting to see anything, and there was this big orange glow, a big orange ball. And I mean, we're talking split seconds here, but it was enough to take in. It was a large orange globe type shape, but it had a sort of clear torch front to it. It had a sort of eye. And I looked round and I could see this sort of eye facing the other way from me with this orange back. And I turned round to my dad who was in the car. I was like, Dad, look at this. By the time we'd gone round, I just managed to twig. The torch had sort of swung round on itself. And as soon as it obviously noticed activity or movement, it was gone. And he sort of just looked, and I don't know if he even caught a flash of it. But I certainly wouldn't have made that up at that age. And that's really stuck with me. Since then, I've seen a lot of filmed footage of lights, and indeed did actually catch a small white ball of light in Alton Priors last year, but completely by accident. I was actually doing some filming, not particularly of the crop circles, and when I came to edit it and slow it down by 10 times, suddenly this white ball appears in the back, and I watched it several times. There's no way it's a bird, and just something else to reinforce to me that there's something strange is going on here.
Tell us a bit about the industry that has grown around this, because you've had personal experience about that.
Business-wise,
Business.
When the crop circles started coming here, at least in 1990, we, I believe I'm right in saying we had over 10,000 visitors in 2 weeks. And that was probably more people than have visited Alton Barns throughout the 80s. It was unseen here. We're a quiet rural village. And the crop was obviously being trashed, not intentionally, but with that volume of people walking, it must have been like concrete by the end of it. And the only way to really deal with the situation was to try and recoup a little bit of cash, really, because we lost a hell of a lot of crop. And so we did branch out. We charged people a small fee for entry, which they were all happy to pay, had concessions rates. We began to produce T-shirts, key rings, postcards. We actually had companies approaching us with that, by the way. We didn't go out and say, we want this to make money. We had businesses seeing it in the paper thinking that's a money maker sort of thing. But at the end of the day, people must remember it's not really a money maker. It's just recouping the money we've lost. And that was fine in the early days when you had one circle to concentrate on, and we had a caravan parked up at the top, and villagers did regular shifts to monitor it. But now when you've got 5 or 6 circles on each farm every year, it's just impossible. And people have changed, and it becomes much harder to monitor. So I think that's why you've got things now like the Crop Circle Cafe and other crop circle shops and sites for people to visit. And people are just trying to sort of cash in where they can, I suppose. For a short time I had a little business going, Crop Circle Keyrings, which did very well. Just simply getting some coloured acrylic and laser engraving the formations on there. I only ever did the ones we had on this farm. I just thought it was a nice way to do it. And they proved very popular. But there's a lot of Crop Circle merchandise and all sorts of DVDs out there now. But people, on the whole, have become, it's unfair to say less trustworthy, but the phenomena has now attracted people who aren't giving it the respect it did when it all started. And I'm just talking about this year. We've had a money box stolen, an honesty box, because I mean that's the only way we can do it now. If we can't monitor these fields 24/7, you put a box in and you hope that people don't mind putting £1.50 in to say to say thank you for letting them in your field. And every visitor causes damage, no matter how careful they are. They don't mean to, it's not significant, but every stalk you trample leaves a seed head to be pushed into the ground, and crop you therefore can't pick up with a combine harvester. But then when you've got people breaking into these boxes and stealing, it just adds a real dark shade to the whole thing. And I can't blame farmers for cutting them out these days, cutting their formations out of the field as soon as they arrive, if they're going to be treated like that. I think maybe if people could show, I think maybe it's too late now, but if we could show this degree of respect and kindness towards the farmer and what he's offering with this formation, then maybe they change their minds. But until then, I don't think so.
Speaking of friendly farmers, the Carson land has been hit more than any other territory this season. Do you think there's an unseen relationship between you perhaps and the circle makers, or how do you explain that?
A relationship between the Carsons and the circle makers. Have been asked that before. I don't know is the honest answer. I often ask, why us? And why do we get more than anybody else? They're often codes and messages we know, but they tend to be decoded or decrypted by scientists. So it's not something that the average person can just look at and take from it. There's one case that always stuck with me, and that was in 1996. We had a DNA double helix spiral, and if I'm right in thinking, the DNA strand we were given had an extra cell or an extra strand, which apparently translates to a cancerous cell of some sort, so like a human cancer. And it always got me that a month or so after that, my grandfather was diagnosed with cancer and was dead by the following year. And I don't know, sometimes it just hits home and you think, was that a message aimed at any of us? Was it a warning? Give us a few months before he found out. But you wouldn't think like that, I know, but looking back, it's easy to judge. But no, I don't know if they are directly for us at all or not. But like you said, we do seem to get hit the most, and it's not great for the farming profits, but maybe there is something in there, and maybe one day we'll find out.
Could it be because Tim's such a chill bloke, he just doesn't cut them out? He has respect for the real circles, perhaps.
Yeah, I think Tim's probably got quite a strong bond with the circle makers, whoever they may be. They seem to like him a lot. But I'm not sure whether we can put a link with them being cut out to when they're created. I mean, we've seen at Avebury and the Silbury Hill area keep coming down this year, and yet keep getting cut out. So, but it points to me that must be some unknown phenomena at work, because if you were a hoaxer, I'd get the impression very quickly and say, not worth putting them there, he's going to cut them out, move on. But I think if Tim deep down thought that they were all made by people messing about with planks of wood, he would have them out straight away. But I think because he had them so early on, and has realised, like we all have, that there's got to be something more behind it, that perhaps they're meant to be left there for a little while.
So I'll ask you a tough one, Will.
Cheers.
Why do you think they are leaving these crop circles?
Why do I think they're leaving the crop circles? It's obviously a message of some sort, and what a great way to put a message down. You've got a massive canvas in the landscape. Alton Barnes is shaped in such a way that you've got such great vantage points, Woodborough Hill, Adams Grave, Knapp Hill, that make such beautiful sort of sightseeing spots. I know you have to get the ultimate view in a helicopter or a plane, but they're there, and they're obviously there to be noticed. And if it is some sort of extraterrestrial force at work, then what a clever way to do it, just calmly putting it there for us to take notice of. They're not knocking out our power systems or taking down our phones. It's not a violent attack, but it's been going on a long time now, and I wonder, will it stop? Will we get crop circles for 30 years and then it'll be a story to tell the grandchildren and generations after that, or will it continue? I'm dubious about the fact the world will end in 2012, and I'm hoping it won't. I would like to see my 25th birthday. But there obviously is some sort of message in here. I think we just all have to hope that it's nothing too serious behind the messages, and that it's more a display of artwork of ancient forms than it is a sign of world ending, really.
Some people have said, and keep using this analogy because it helps, that rather like Banksy, there's a trickster element at work here with the circle makers. I'm not talking about the hoaxing. Would you agree? Have you ever had, like for instance, Milk Hill, there's 2 editions. So can you comment on that? I mean, the trickster element, the fact that they seem to have a sense of humour.
Yeah, I think the circle makers, whoever they may be, do have a sense of humour. I think they're very clever. As you say, we tend to get these additions to formations now, often in a very short space of time after they've appeared. Now, I find a lot of sceptical people use that as a number one point to say, hoaxed. They couldn't finish it all in one night. Let's go back and do some more. However, I think it's very, very risky to do that. We know the volumes of people we have out in the fields and on the hills. And to go back and try and make another circle where you've made one, that's going to be the most highly populated area on the farm at that point. But I think, they know when people aren't watching, or they would have been caught. We're saying, why aren't people being caught? Well, I I believe a lot of it happens in just a few short seconds, whatever it may be. Because if it was any longer, people would notice. It's not that hard for somebody somewhere to see something. Lights in a field, noises. You do hear things around here. You could hear a pin drop at times on quieter parts of the farm.
Let's see what else. Anyone else want to add anything? Stop showing up. There are some people who would lose a lot of money, right? What is the
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, you ask.
You were talking about how you, in some of the farm, would recuperate their money by putting honesty boxes, people standing outside the fields, and like the keychains, things like that. You were recuperating money, but you've seen that now people have stopped really doing that, giving the money back to you guys, or you can't even be at all places at once. But now you see a lot of people who aren't farmers benefiting off this. Can you just kind of go over, like, all the restaurants, hotels, tour guides, helicopters, bus tours, photographers?
Oh, I'll have a bit of a dig at coach tours. That's all right. Yeah, because what they do now is they charge £5 a head or something for people, and don't ask Tim, so they're making about £500, and they don't have to pay a penny to come in there. So that's the latest.
Yeah, talk about that.
Yeah. Since times moved on, that people have come away from respecting the farmer whose property it is, and we're giving him a bit of money towards the damaged crop to investigate in other businesses. As I've said, the researchers have been largely pushed out by the crop circle tourists, so to speak, who just think it's an attraction for them to visit. As far as they're aware, it's anybody's land. They can just go and wander in like they want, and then go and visit other places. So the fields are being left purely as somewhere to walk in. But nobody thinks about the farmer. Very few people bother to ask the farmer. It's just taken for granted. They will then go and spend considerable money in other establishments. The barge in down the road, there's no denying, okay, it's done very well, why not cash in on the phenomena? But they've taken a heck of a lot of money each year, as do other pubs in the area, and that's all because of the circles. If the circles weren't there, they wouldn't have the crowd. And sometimes it's worth asking, well, would it be fairer, to reinvest a bit of that money towards the farmers and help them with their costs? Drivers, yeah. See, I want to say a cafe, but I don't want to be harsh. Don't want to.
The tour buses.
Yeah.
Say that again.
All right.
I'm gonna pause it real quick. Yeah, we're off.
People have become very crafty with making money out of the crop circles. Notably, I'd like to touch on organised tours, particularly coach tours. It's bad enough to see lines of cars parked up on 6-metre strips beside the fields, which I'd like to point out now to anybody are conservational strips funded by the government to be left for nature. They're not designated car parks. So to see a few people parked up, often blocking field entrances, is a pain. But when we drive up and then see 50-seater coaches jammed full of people marching into the field, that really is pushing the line. And you go up to these coaches and find they haven't asked permission. So you've got 50-odd tourists who, all respect to them, are none the wiser, but the organisers haven't actually paid the farmer for visiting the field. So they're making an absolute mint, because they're offering this attraction which they're charging people for, but it's not their attraction to charge for, and then they don't actually pay the farmer. So this is becoming more and more common, and they're just taking advantage really of what they've got.
That's great. Okay. Right, you go ahead, lads. Questions? We good?
Yeah.
So why are the farmers getting upset?
When these circles appear, they're appearing on a lot of different farms, and a lot of different farmers are involved. Now, every farmer's going to have a different personality and a different reaction to these things. As circles spread, farmers are witnessing them for the first time on their land, and majority are getting very upset and angry about it. And you have to understand this, because to them it is mindless criminal damage. They are not aware of perhaps some of the research that we are here. As the Carson family in Alton Barnes, we've been witness to it for so long, it's just taken for granted now. Crop circles come every year, that is fact. We don't not expect one to. In fact, it'd be unusual if we didn't have one. But a lot of farmers are new to it, and the trouble is crop circle visitors tend to just swarm to their farms straight in the field without asking permission, and then get upset when they're asked to leave, often quite rudely or abruptly. I just ask them to perhaps take into account that if they hadn't seen this before and had somebody marching onto their land, just to pay a bit more respect, maybe ring ahead and ask. And if worse comes to the worst and you're told no, then you just have to really take no for an answer, remembering that in a way this is an extended garden for somebody, and if you had a beautiful flower arrangement in your back garden and somebody came stomping across it, you wouldn't be very happy yourself. And I think that's the key thing with it, to always put the farmer in the number one position. If it wasn't for him growing his crop, you wouldn't have a circle to visit. Or food, exactly. And the more they trample, the less food they're going to get out of it, to be honest.
Well, do you have it? You went to high school?
Oh, really?
So why bother hoaxing?
Why bother hoaxing is a big question, and I think it has a lot of answers to it, somewhere and in some way. I personally don't know anybody around here, local, who would have the spare time to go and do what some of these hoaxers say they do and create large formations in the night. I also don't think any of them would have the artistic talent or abilities to do some of the shapes we're talking about. So personally, I think it's probably people further afield, not in the village. We know by now, everybody knows everything in a village like this. News spreads fast. And so I think the people who do hoax do it purely for self-esteem, gives them a bit of a kick, gives them a bit of hype in the community. If that's how they feel they want to take it, fine. And I completely understand people going out and doing night watches to try and see what's going on. I can understand that, but I wouldn't want to do it a lot. Being outside on a hill at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, I'd rather be in bed personally. Sorry.
Okay, I guess what was?
5 minutes on this camera. This camera's gone.
So this is a really random one, but look at the hoaxers and look at the researchers and the croppies.
Yeah.
Believers and the hoaxers. Is there a difference in terms of personality you found between hoaxers and researchers and believers?
There's a huge difference in personalities. I mean, amongst all people, whether you take the personalities of the believers or the personalities of the hoaxers. But I know for a fact that if ever they were to meet publicly, you'd have it'd be quite entertaining. Really, there'd be a large fight, and I hope that. Sorry, I just had a story come back to me of when there was a fight. Sorry, shit. I don't know if I'm going to talk about that.
So like the difference in Peter.
They did meet. It was Peter and somebody else, and it got really violent. I think it was down at the barge or something, and people yelling at him, "Hide! Ever come back here again? Kill you!" Sorry, I'll come back to. I'll try and do that one again.
4 minutes. You're gonna stop.
Yeah.
Camera's rolling.
Okay, so personalities, and how do they differ? Are they happier?
Personalities seem to differ hugely. Genuinely, the people who are interested in crop circles are really, they're nice people. I find some of them very wild and wacky, but they're all completely harmless. None of them would ever hurt you. I got told recently that by one lady, I think she was French, she told me that somebody had once told her that the Carson family were the founding fathers of humanity, which was a great compliment. But, people are just trying to be nice, and, I'd like to think that maybe we were, but I have a feeling we weren't. On the hoaxing side of things, bit of a different story. Sorry. Shit, sorry. Fucking. I just got it in my head now.
Honey monster to skeleton cider drunk. Before or after?
We should show like the other
Sorry,
videos, a picture of the honey monster and a picture of Skeletor from He-Man.
Okay, there's a guy. Looks like the guy at the front of the Sugar Puffs.
Side.
Okay. You're good to go.
Okay. The hoaxers are rather different. They're very negative about everything, and from times when I've seen them before doing organised circles that have been paid for in advance, so all legal. My ears are full of, oh, who do you think makes them? We did this, we did that. And to be honest, I'm just waiting for them to spill the beans and say they've made one here on the land at Alton Barnes, and then they'll find they won't be so popular. And we're not afraid of them, and if ever we do catch them, there'll be serious consequences. Coming onto somebody's land and trespassing is a civil offence, and therefore can largely be dealt with by the landowner. So anybody found causing that sort of damage will be dealt with duly.
You'll rue the day. It's rolling.
Okay. I've known a few people who've changed to the dark side, shall we say it? Sorry. Hang on, let me do that again.
If you're ready, it's rolling.
Yeah. I've known a few people who've changed to the dark side over the years, who've gone from firm believers, real key researchers, who've decided that that's not what they now think, and have gone over to actually producing the circles themselves. Shit. So it's a bloody image of him in my head.
That's good.
Whenever you're ready.
I've known people over the years who've changed from being real key valued researchers and having a genuine interest in the whole phenomena, who've completely changed and decided that they believe it's all a man-made hoax. And one person in particular who's now moved to producing the circles himself. And I just think it's sad to see that, really, from somebody who's investigating a real phenomena. It's not really helping by tricking others with his work, trying to get them to believe that is now the real phenomena. I mean, fair point. If you don't believe it is an extraterrestrial phenomena, etc., then by all means pull out and move into something else. But there's no need to go around and try and trick people and manipulate other people's thoughts. I think this is a phenomena, an idea, whereby you should hold your own thoughts and not impose them on other people.
That's good.
That's
That was awesome.
Very good.
Cool.
mate.